Hey, welcome to another Behind the Mask. And super excited to have you learn a little bit more about Nick Patel. I know everyone knows Nick. Nick, welcome to Behind the Mask.
Great to be here, Ed.
And so when I think about you and sort of your professional byline, I know that you just started Stealth Consulting. You're the CEO Stealth Consulting after 19 years, right? You practiced for 19 years. And you're
Yeah, I'm still faculty at USC. I haven't practiced since November, but my plan is eventually do some volunteering or do resident clinic there.
Yeah, so that's really cool that you continued that. You were CIO, CDO at Prism, and then you're also call yourself a digital Jedi. Tell us about that, because in the background I can see a lightsaber.
Yeah, I am a Star Wars nerd for sure. And that kind of stuck. One of my executives at Prisma Health, when I was a CDO there, said that Nick, you're like a digital Jedi. It's like this is really happened during COVID when we went to a lot of virtual visits and how fast we were able to do that work, and it kind of stuck. And I was like, oh, technically, yeah, I like that, and I even have it on my LinkedIn tagline as digital Jedi.
Yeah, no, I love that. And so we're really going to focus on three big questions as we do with all of our episodes. And the first is, who are you? And we're getting to do some of that right now. How did you get here? And then where are you going? So it's kind of interesting for people to sort of understand what makes Nick Patel, and then how did he do the things that he ended up doing, and then where is he going? And I appreciate you doing this. And I know we talked before about sort of some of your heroes is the wrong word, but when we talk about digital Jedi, your three characters, let's say it that way, the three characters that you relate to the most. Tell us about that, whether it's Marvel Studios or Star Wars. I think you mentioned there's three of them. And then what's the why behind the three of them?
Yeah, so definitely caught the eye of the lightsaber. It's actually Darth Vader's lightsaber. It's made fully out of Legos. And right next to it, you see Iron Man. And you can't see it off camera, but maybe off my right shoulder, you can see a bat wing. So my three top characters are Iron Man, Batman, and Darth Vader. And I just naturally felt like I gravitated towards them because they all use technology to give them powers, right? So you look at Batman as or Iron Man, they don't have any natural superpowers, that they use technology and harness that power to do good. Darth Vader only has a little bit of spin on that, but he has the Force, but he uses technology to stay alive. Without that technology and the mask, he wouldn't be able to breathe, right? Because of what happened to him in the past. So, and he eventually becomes good again, if you watch the Star Wars movies. And honestly, I just like kind of the dark kind of theme, the black cars and the Empire always had the cool stuff, and Iron Man always had the cool stuff.
Yeah. No, I've never thought about it until you mentioned it. The fact that they were normal, the first two, normal people like you and I, no special superpowers. They didn't come from, it wasn't handed to them.
Right.
And but they leveraged technology to make something and
Yeah.
help. I like that a lot. So Nick, as we get into this, tell us a little bit about, because I know you made a career switch, so people want to know about that. So
Mhm.
tell us where you were. We've already alluded to it, and then what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I've been a practicing internal medicine physician for 19 plus years. I was at Palmetto Health, which eventually became Prisma Health here in South Carolina. Been in South Carolina pretty much all my life since the age of 4. I was born in England, and my parents immigrated here at that time, right around December '79. Reagan was becoming president, and we moved into a little tiny town called Hemingway, South Carolina. 2 traffic lights. And we're the only Indian family in a 40-mile radius. No one had ever seen an Indian person before. So I had to go through are you an Indian, like an American Indian with teepees, to, are you, wearing a turban that lives in India? What are you? And I wasn't around people like me. And I felt like, and it was interesting. It was, if you think about it, it's kind of weird that this happened, but it still kind of happens to this day around the country. But there's still, are you white? Are you black? What camp are you in? I remember the high school in Hemingway had 2 proms, a traditional prom, which was predominantly African American, and a quote unquote white prom. And now you said, which one are you going to? I said, I'm going to both because I have friends on both sides. But yeah, it was interesting growing up there, and eventually went to become a doctor, and did my residency actually at Palmetto Health in internal medicine. And then the chair asked a couple of us, "Is hey, we don't have a hospitalist group. Do you mind starting one?" And we did. Grew up from 5 of us to over 130, and just one thing led to another, and moved up the chain, and it's been 19 years.
So you have a very westernized name. Is that your first name? Is that your given name, or is that a short for something else?
Yeah, it's short for knitting, like knitting a sweater. But in Indian tradition, at least back then, it was like an aunt or somebody that got to name you, and that's the name that I was given. My mom always called me Nicholas. Nicholas turned into Nick. Some people call me Nit, N-I-T. And when I was in America, eventually Nit turned into Nick, N-I-C-K, and so it just kind of stuck, and I never changed it.
Yeah, no, that's really
Yeah.
cool. At what age did you realize you were a leader?
Yeah, that came later in life. My parents were in a hotel business, and I typically, we came and lived at the hotel, lived there for over 20 years, and it was I helped my parents, run the hotel and rent rooms and clean rooms and all those things. And I guess some of it started in my probably teenage years because I was getting into running the business, and then, but I didn't really understand what a leader was at that age. But I would say conceptually, as a when I was in at Palmetto Health is when I decided, hey, maybe I could do this. So I just kept getting promoted into medical leadership and other things, and it was an odd feeling to have people follow you as a leader. And after I was, I'm more of a tribal leadership kind of guy. I work more in a matrixed way, and we were just very successful working as a great team. But you never know that you're a leader until someone calls you one, and that happened in my early 30s.
So you grew up, your parents were operating a hotel. What was the trigger for you to maybe not follow that family business and become a physician? Was there some trigger that helped you decide, oh, I'm a doctor?
Yeah, so back then, the closest doctor was 40 miles away, and which was in Florence, South Carolina. And I used to get sick a lot. I don't know if it was the move from England to America, but I got a lot of ear infections. I had pneumonia, had to be hospitalized. And, my parents hardly had anything, and they didn't know the lay of the land, who to go see, and all those types of things. And they used to always go back to where they landed, and sometimes that meant going back to Charlotte or Gastonia, where we landed. And I just remember there's a family doctor that eventually moved in to our area, and he pulled out this 3D model of ear anatomy. It's like, Nick, this is why you're getting ear infections. Your eustachian tube and this particular bacteria, and here's the antibiotic, and here's how the antibiotic kills the cell wall of this particular. I was like, whoa, I was bought. And I remember whenever I got treated by him that the pain went away and I felt better. And I was like, man, how cool would it be to be in that position to help others? And I was already science inclined. And so it was just a natural fit for me. And I told my dad I want to be a doctor. Of course, as an Indian parent, they're like, yeah, that's awesome. Like every other Indian parent, they want their kid to be a doctor.
Yeah, that's funny. Is there something that surprised you that you totally unexpected? So you become this physician, you head down that path. Was there something that surprised you in a good or a bad way that was like, oh, I didn't realize that came with being a physician?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things, and I don't know if it was because I'm in South Carolina or not, but I noticed that it wasn't a very diverse profession. I noticed that it was very traditional in its methods of training and hierarchy. And I also noticed that how old it was, meaning a lot of retail space and other places had already digitized, but we were still on paper charts, and we're finding chasing the paper chart and putting it in a carousel. I'm like, this makes no sense. And just how the thing I found that I didn't like was how it was pretty much the health system had a mentality of, you're privileged to see me and not the other way around. It's not that we were out there trying to do good as a population, or patients were privileged to see us. it was just this bravado that came with it, and that whole consumer kind of conversation or spin didn't exist back then. And that was surprising to me. Because I grew up in a hotel, I thought everything should be run as a business. And I think that's why I was successful in the way I did things. And I always believed the customer was the patient. And before the word consumerism came about and we started talking about these things, to me, if my patient was doing well and I was doing my job well, then that would lead to a satisfied patient, and which would lead to me being satisfied in my role.
Yeah, I can really see how that all comes together now with your previous role as CDO,
Mhm.
being a clinician. So, um, is there anything, put yourself back at Prisma Health for this question. Is there anything that you can share that 90 some percent of people that you've served with in the past wouldn't know about you? So, what's a revelation of Nick?
Well, I think that the biggest thing is that you go in. I think people think that you know everything about the digital space, and I don't know everything about the digital space. And I think the thing they learned very quickly about me was that I don't approach it looking at technology. I look at it from needing what the clinical need was. The other thing I think, if you ask my senior executive leaders, what they didn't probably know, is that how many roadblocks there are in order to get anything done. I mean, there's red tape in everything you do, but they just probably don't know how much there is and why the progress to execution is so slow. I think a lot of health systems and leaders deal with that. I think there's still a lot of politics in healthcare, a lot of people who want to protect their swim lanes versus working together in a greater good. And those are some things they probably didn't realize. And a lot of people don't realize I grew up in a small town. I don't outside of that.
I know I've learned a lot of things already as well. Is
Mhm.
there a defining moment in your life? Could have been in your youth or in adulthood. Like there's this catalyst that led you to some particular direction.
Yeah, there was an interesting thing. I probably happened maybe during my residency. I just felt like I knew I love medicine, but there was always something underneath the surface that says I was meant to do something else or more. Medicine was always part of it, but there was something itching at me that, is this it? Is this like 3 years residency? Now go see how many 30 people a day and go home every day, and that's it? After spending 20 years in school, it seems like, right? And I always told my wife that. And what it was is that one day, our practice, we as a medical director, we had to switch over to an EHR. And there are two providers there that were just absolutely amazing, loved by their patients and adored by the community. And I saw what they went through when we deployed an EHR. And I started to do a workflow analysis and just on my own because I wanted to understand, well, what's going on. Why is it taking me longer to see patients? And that led to essentially working with Microsoft Surface, and that led to a huge initiative at our organization, the first in the country. That led to me being more on the speaker circuit and talking about what I did. The providers were rallying behind, yeah, we need more people like this to help IT understand the strives that we go through. And that led to eventually becoming medical director of informatics to CDIO, and then eventually doing the things that I do, or CDO, sorry, the things that I do in the space now. So yeah, it was a defining moment that happened about 9, 10 years ago.
No, that's awesome. Tell us about a time that someone tried to hold you back and what you did as a result.
Wow. How long's your show? It's a commonplace in healthcare. But I could tell you when I did that project with Microsoft, a lot of people tried to hold me back. And the way I got it through was having the providers all write an email to the CEO to say how much this has helped them, how their productivity has gotten better, how they're spending more time with their family. And that's what got everyone out of my way.
Yeah.
But I found that the person who should have been doing this or thinking in this direction wasn't doing it, and probably felt that I was, treading in their lane, swim lane. And so, yeah, and then that happened throughout my career, CDO as well. There's always naysayers out there, and you just have to, again, prove your point and make sure you have the right support. And I think that's what gets you, get you to success.
Yeah, that's really insightful. What would you say is your biggest mistake or oopsie that you've ever made in your life?
Yeah, I think my biggest mistake, I've had many, but one that brought me to now being independent is that I did three jobs. I was practicing medicine, I was vice chair of medicine, and chief digital officer. None of the other executives had three roles like I did. And I thought I could say yes. And I just, the problem was my biggest mistake is saying yes to everything. And then was working 50, 60 hours a week, and that's not sustainable, and spending a lot of time away from family. But yeah, those are some of the biggest, that's probably the biggest mistake. I should have been able to say no. And I just never, I felt like I had to say yes. Um, so yeah, learn from that lesson big time.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and I'm sure many people can relate. Tell me about the last thank you card that you either received or thank you card that you sent to someone.
Yeah, it's probably about 6 months ago, I would say. The word was getting out that I was exiting the organization, and had a few patients write me thank you cards. The thing about medicine is it's about relationships, right? You build a rapport with people. It's not just a person walking in the door. You know them, you know their family, and sometimes you go to funerals, and sometimes you go to 100th birthday parties, or 105 birthday party, 105th birthday party, and it becomes a relationship, and you become part of the family. And I've been very blessed that I had some wonderful people that have been on my journey that have equally given me back as much as I've given them. And so those thank you cards meant a lot to me. um, the last card I written was to a patient, someone that is very close to me, that just everything that person's gone through has taught me a lot, and I wanted to, and they kept me encouraged to fight the fight, because I had thoughts about leaving years ago, and they really kept me encouraged. So I wrote that around the same time, I would say. But I also wrote just a general friendly one this weekend. A good friend of mine gave me an old Forester birthday bourbon for free as a gift, and I couldn't. I mean, that was a nice gift. So I'm sending him a thank you card and something nice in return.
Yeah, that's very cool. Nick, did you ever cry with your patients, or when you go to funerals, how were you, was it hard not to be emotional with patients and families?
Yeah, I went through a period of time where I became numb, especially when I was a hospitalist, I found. And that's one of the reasons I left. I was left out of frustration that people were getting admitted for things that could have been totally avoidable. Two, seeing people go through what they've gone through and pass away when I had no power to change it. I remember there was this patient that came in. I was working the ER shift at the VA one day, and a non-veteran walked in, because if it's a 911 emergency, they would take you to the closest one. And someone came in cardiac arrest, and it was a 38-year-old female teacher. The dad had called, the mom had, the daughter couldn't find him, and found her down behind her desk at school. They brought her because the school was literally a mile away from the VA, and we coded her, and she passed away. And the 8-year-old daughter came up to me, and it's the father knew. We coded her for a long time, and father knew the look on my face when I came in to talk to him. But the daughter got up to me first and tugged on my white coat and goes, "Do I still have a mother?" And that was, I'll never forget that day. I'll never forget the smell in the room, the people in that room, just the dingy white coat that I was wearing. I'll never forget that day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've cried many times with my patients, especially when I went into primary care. I've lost patients through cancer. I had one very young man, 28-year-old, shoot himself.
Mm.
Didn't see that coming. He was, treated for depression, had a psychiatrist. Unfortunately, got in a fight with his girlfriend, and decided to do something, something like that, and killed himself. And I still saw his mother after that, and seeing the
Mm.
fallout of that, her only son shooting himself. So those moments have occurred many times. Me, my nurse, I'm a more spiritual person. I don't follow one religion or another, but we all pray together sometimes. It's but yeah, I've seen it. I've seen a lot of that. But one of my maybe another fault is I try not to share any of that. When I come home, it's dad's home and don't want to talk about it because I don't want it to depress anyone else. But yeah, those moments unfortunately happen in healthcare quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad there's physicians like you that are super empathetic and can empathize, with your patients and their families. That's pretty cool. So we really covered who are you quite extensively, also how you got to where you are. But let's talk about where you're going, but also tell us a little bit about stealth consulting. So this is a big change for you in your career. So
Mhm.
let's talk about that because that is where you're going, and then I'll have a couple other questions around that.
Yeah, so I made the decision actually in May of last year and then went through a transition. The organization was great. They tried to get me to stay and in some capacity. I decided to just make a clean break, just to be able to do things more with some more freedom. But my company essentially does three things. It gives advice to health systems. So I'm a fractional executive at two health systems currently, health tech companies, and I give them advice on their product and how they need to position it, what they need to enhance, and how they, who they need to talk to in order to get into the health system. And third, venture capital, where should they partner and look at their portfolio and see where they need to consolidate potentially, and who they need to look at to potentially acquire. So those are the things I've been doing. It keeps me quite busy. I really do enjoy it. When you're at one health system, you're at one health system, and you're kind of fighting the fight in one way. My executive coach told me you do need to branch out and do other things, and now I'm able to do all those things, and they really connect really well. And so November 4th will be my 1 year anniversary of leaving Prisma Health, and we still stay in contact and everything, but really enjoying it to get to spend more time with my family, spend more time with my son and daughter.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that and challenge you, that, you left part of the reason Prisma Health was the hours you took on all these extra roles. And now that you're in stealth consulting to make sure that you don't go back that way, but it sounds like you're
Yeah.
putting some roles in there to keep that.
Yeah, it's a definitely a balancing act, and working from home, I would say 90% of the time. Don't have to be in the airport very often, but maybe once a month. And I think the interesting thing, Ed, is that wasn't the three roles, is how much time it took to get anything done. And it's interesting, and you've seen this when advisors come in, they listen to them and they're very focused on what they need to do and help them move on that journey, versus when you're internal, it's the political kind of things that you have to navigate and the personalities and the conflicts, and it just takes 10x more time to get anything done. And that's what ate up a lot of my time. I felt like I spent 80% of my time being a used car salesman in my organization versus actually trying to get stuff done. I'm very, outcome oriented kind of guy, and I want to see impact and outcome. And I feel like I'm doing it now in a quarter, if not less of the time that I was doing it before, and being able to do it on a larger scale because Charisma is only in South Carolina, and I'm now making change nationally, if not in some instances globally.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I can appreciate that for sure. What about on the personal side? What any big, audacious, hairy goals, mountains you're going to climb or time with your family, or what do you sort of have planned? Like you're going to do a marathon or something.
Yeah, I am gonna be turning 50 next year, and I definitely have some travels that I want to plan. I'm thinking about, and I'm a big fan of great white sharks. Not that I ever want to be encountered in the water with one, but we're thinking about going to South Africa. Maybe you might be getting into a cage. So if you don't hear from me again, you know where I was. Um, but that's one thing I'm thinking about. Traveling to Japan. My son really loves Japanese culture and planning to go throughout Japan and other areas. But I'm not the most athletic guy. I am getting better at golf. It's about the most athletic thing I can tell you, but there will be no mountains in my future physically climbing other than emotionally, probably.
Yeah. How is as we wrap up here, just bringing it all together, how's the family rallied in the new Nick, in the new role, like you said, almost coming up in almost a year, like has it been a demonstrable impact?
It's been great. It's been great, and I think the timing was perfect. Like most kids, they went through a lot of challenge during COVID. My son, especially as a teenager, going through high school during COVID and homeschool and all that, and being here for him, and as he goes through that, and now he's a senior, thinking about college and getting ready because I want to spend as much time as I can with him because then he's going to be off to college and God knows where else. And so it's been wonderful. I think maybe at the same time, it's probably been a little annoying for them because I'm around a little bit more. And why is dad home so much? But overall, they're very, very happy that I'm home.
Yeah. No, Nick, that's cool. You're a great person, and I think it comes out. I appreciate you sharing so freely and authentically. And like I already said, about halfway through, I'm so happy that there's physicians like you taking care of people. So it's you're truly empathetic and caring, and you understand tech too, which is the best part to bring into the healing process as well. And so thank you for being my guest.
I really appreciate it. Thank you for those very kind words, Ed, and keep doing what you're doing because I'm telling you, I'm trying to be like you. I mean, just the great work that you're doing, and hopefully, maybe one day we can write a book together.
Yes, I definitely want to be able to do something like that together and work together. I think fate will find a way to make that happen. And again, thank you so much, and I appreciate the audience. Thank you all for tuning in, watching, and we appreciate you and thank you.